I'll just slide this thing out and we'll just grab, 3 or 4 or 5 random figures and we'll talk about them. So that's what we're going to do today. So let me go through here and grab the first one out, and then we'll go back over here to this spot like usual, and we'll talk about it. Hey everyone, my name is Perry, and welcome back to the Cassette Phase. So I hope that you're all having a good week so far. I just wanted to kind of pop on for a quick little midweek video with a little bit different camera angle. We're trying something just slightly different today, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I don't know if it's because I was gone for a little over a week or what, but I just felt like making a video today. It's kind of like my creative outlet, I guess, and honestly, a little bit of a stress reliever. So you may start to see videos from me just a little bit more often. I don't know, we'll see. I'm still doing a lot of trial and error when it comes to this channel, but as long as I'm having fun, we're gonna keep going. And speaking of fun, the idea for today's video came from my little habit of going over to the basket over there and grabbing out an action figure each morning to keep with me at my desk throughout my workday. And if you've noticed, I've actually started fidgeting with an action figure each time I'm talking to you guys here on YouTube. I don't know, it just kind of helps enhance the nostalgic mindset a little bit. Is that weird? Maybe, I don't know. And as I was grabbing the vintage toy of the day this morning, I thought it might be kind of fun to pull the basket out every once in a while, pick out 4 or 5 random action figures and just talk about them. Maybe go over to the Ottoman and do some show and tell and share some memories about these random vintage toys. Because to me, old toys from our childhood and vintage action figures, those are some of the most nostalgic items that we can hold and carry with us. They're like little time machines. So that's what we'll do today. And I don't have like a detailed retrospective history written up for any of these figures or anything like that. But don't worry, those types of videos are going to remain a staple here on the Cassette Phase. But I'm always looking for fun little ways to infuse some nostalgia into your day, but with videos that don't require a ton of research. And we'll still do our cassette of the day, of course, but after that, we'll just stay over at the Ottoman and take a close look at some random vintage action figures. Sound like fun to you? Come hang out. Okay everyone, welcome back to the Ottoman, and welcome to another great day here in the den. Today, going in the background, we've got some Perfect Strangers. You know you liked that show, don't be ridiculous. But for today's cassette of the day, we're actually going to do a double, just because I couldn't decide which of these two I wanted to talk about, so I just grabbed them both. And these are audio cassettes this time, so, venturing a little bit away from our usual VHS tapes on the cassette of the day. And these are for a couple of artists and albums, or cassettes, however you want to refer to them as, from 1987 and 1989, respectively, that you could not escape if you were a kid back then. Now, is this music that's going to earn you any cred? No, not at all. This is a couple of artists who gave us bubblegum, pop that was popular at the mall. And my own personal story of both of these artists comes from my friend, who happened to be a girl who lived across the street at the childhood home, who had these tapes in constant rotation on her little Sharp boombox. Remember those things and how cool those looked? They didn't sound that great, but they really looked cool, and perfect for these kinds of tapes that I'm going to talk about today. So we've got one from Debbie Gibson and one from Tiffany. Now you guys know, like I said before, I don't care about cred on this channel. You know, I listen to Motley Crue and Dokken and even some things like Lillian Axe and some of the less well-known, you know, hard rock and metal acts from the 80s. I listen to all of that too. But there is room in any 80s music collection for this kind of pop music. I mean, think about it. We were kids, at least I was. Yeah, I was, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old when these tapes came out. And so, you know, I didn't mind hearing, you know, stuff from Debbie Gibson or New Kids on the Block or any of that stuff, you know. Does it hold up now? It just kind of depends on the mood that you're in and the environment, you know. If you're sitting down, you know, cataloging your old toys or flipping through your old baseball cards or whatever, you know, maybe this stuff might not sound so bad. You should give it another try if you haven't heard these songs in 30 or 40 years. But these two get lumped together, obviously, you know, similar musical styles, similar eras, similar audience. And like I said, you couldn't really escape these tapes. And I have another one from Debbie Gibson too. I just grabbed Electric Youth because it was the first one that I saw. But you know, some of these songs aren't bad. You know, are they cheesy, schmaltzy, synthesized 80s pop? Yes, of course. Do I dislike those things here on this channel? No, I do not. I actually enjoy a lot of that stuff. It just really takes me back. So, like I said, mixed in with the hair metal and the classic stuff from like Zeppelin and Pink Floyd that I have over there on the wall, there's always going to be room for stuff like this too. Because I think these are true relics of a very specific point in time when, you know, the jean jackets and the hairspray of the people that were going to the mall and you know, listening to these types of artists, that kind of stays with you, you know, when you're a kid and you see all that stuff going on. So I thought I'd pull both these out for the double cassette of the day before we dive into action figures. So there you go. Okay, and just real quick before we get started, let me kind of orient you guys a little bit as to where we're at. Here's the credenza with the smart TV on it, you know, where I sit and watch my shows and my movies from time to time. Well, under there, right next to the DVD player, I keep a little like vintage Coca-Cola crate, I guess. It's like a shallow, you know, it's like one of those shallow crates that you would have seen the Coke, the 2-liter bottles in at your grocery store back in the 80s. Or maybe like they just delivered some to the local, you know, Circle K, and there's a stack of these things out back. I don't even really remember where I got it, but it's turned into a kind of a catch-all for just some of my random vintage action figures. Now in there I don't keep any of like the 3 3/4 stuff. So there's no like G.I. Joes or Star Wars. These are more so like your 4 to 5 to 6 inch figures, like your He-Man and your Ninja Turtles and those types of things. And if you've been with the channel a little while, you know that I used to have a ton of action figures out on the shelves. And I've kind of revamped that over the years to where there's now just like a few of my favorites. And the shelves are kind of reserved for other things at this point. But I still want to be able to get to some of these action figures quickly. And as I mentioned in the intro, get them out and play with them and fidget with them during work. That's kind of the purpose that they're serving. So you're not going to see anything valuable in here, anything rare. Most of this stuff is incomplete. These are literally just the figures that I like to dig out and fidget with, or if I want to show you a figure while I'm, you know, doing my cassette of the day or part of my video. So here we are. Lots of fun stuff in here. So I figure what we'll do is, you know, if I'm looking for a video idea, something that's easy, like I said, doesn't require a lot of research or editing, I'll just slide this thing out and we'll just grab, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 random figures and we'll talk about them. So that's what we're going to do today. So let me go through here and grab the first one out, and then we'll go back over here to this spot like usual, and we'll talk about it. Be right back. Yeah, so I tried to do the whole, you know, close your eyes and just dig around in there until you find one and pull it out, but it didn't work that well, honestly. They all got kind of stuck together with their arms and their legs and everything. But I did wind up pulling one out from the original Playmates Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line for one of my favorite old figures, actually, with Rat King here. Now this is one that if memory serves, my younger brother got this one for Christmas one year. And you know how it is when you've got a sibling. A lot of the action figures just kind of go into a big pot or like a big toy box, and you can't always remember, whose was whose. We did keep track a little bit with some of our favorites, but when it's just side characters like this from Ninja Turtles, it was just kind of like, okay, is that your Rat King or is that my Rat King? But yeah, this was early in the line. I think, the second wave, I think. Don't quote me on that. I know it was pretty early, but really cool looking figure. Kind of gross in a way, as a lot of them were back then. Especially in the Ninja Turtles line, you had things like Muckman and Mutagen Man. Yeah, I always thought this one was kind of cool. Just a cool looking villain. Doesn't really look like he did in the cartoon, but that was kind of the case with a lot of the figures in this line. NECA has in the recent years done like some more cartoon accurate representations of some of these characters, and they're really cool. I don't usually go after them. They're a little bit expensive for my taste at this point, and I'm not a huge fan of like the all the amazing articulation that you can get and all the posing that you can do. I did that for a little while, but they didn't seem to hold up. They don't stay in those poses, and they drop their weapons, and the joints get kind of loose. I'm a big fan of these old, solid, sturdy figures that don't move much. I actually prefer that. So this guy's no exception. Pretty cool figure. I'm sure a lot of you guys had this one at some point. Good old Rat King. Let's keep going. So the next one that I grabbed is going to give us kind of a little interesting story, because I was never really a huge wrestling fan as a kid. And what do we have here? Flying Brian. I think his name is Brian Pillman. Yeah, this is kind of like not my area of expertise, which is fine. I saw some WWF as a kid, and I know this is WCW, right? But I never really stuck with it. You couldn't escape it altogether. If you were flipping the channels on your old TV in your bedroom in the 80s, you were going to find some wrestling, and usually it kept my attention for at least a little while, just to see what was going on with all the characters and some of the cool moves that they were doing. But no, like now, whenever I see wrestling figures at like a toy show, like in a bargain bin or something, or just anywhere, if they're cheap, I'll usually just grab them, because I remember my friends having a lot of these. Every friend's house that I went to had some wrestling figures, and you guys know I'm a big fan of the New 80s Revolution, so when I watch Jason, talking about wrestling figures, it kind of sparks my interest, and it does. It takes you back to this particular time in the late 80s, very early 90s. So I like these little Galoob figures too, because again, no articulation. They can go in your little basket here and not get messed up. You're not going to wear the joints out or anything like that. So anytime I see these little Galoob guys, I try to pick them up. I think they're really cool figures. All right, so the next random figure that I pulled is this purple alligator guy. Bucky O'Hare, I believe, is the line that this comes from. Not even sure where I got this, but it has that look. It looks like it could have been, part of the Ninja Turtles line, or like Street Sharks, or any of those great, like, bright, eye-catching action figure lines that we experienced as kids. And I've got a few different Bucky O'Hare figures, and they're always really cool. The sculpts on them are awesome. The colors are usually really good, and just really cool characters. Now, I didn't know the Bucky O'Hare cartoon, although I have turned it on YouTube and had it going in the background, as an adult, but I didn't watch it as a kid. But I did rent the Nintendo game for Bucky O'Hare quite a few times. The box art on that thing was like really, really eye-catching, and when you saw it amongst a sea of possible NES rentals, it was just one that my kid brain immediately gravitated towards. So again, no accessories, nothing fancy, but great colors. I don't even know this character's name. Somebody in the comments, I'm sure, can help me out. Yeah, but Bucky O'Hare, I don't think that gets enough love as a toy line. I know there wasn't a huge amount of figures or vehicles or anything, but all of the ones that I ever encountered look really, really cool and definitely take you back to that era. So I'm happy to have that one. Now this next one's pretty fun. I don't know how well he's going to come across on camera because he's basically see-through. We've got a transparent, translucent action figure here with Iceman from the X-Men. Just so cool looking. This is not a toy line that I had as a kid. You know, I was probably 11, 12 years old at this point, but I did, you know, call it a guilty pleasure or not. I don't know if the term guilty pleasure is actually anything that we need to be worried about, but I watched that X-Men animated series. What a great cartoon. You know, even as an older kid, quote unquote, I just thought that the stories were cool, the music was awesome. And that makes sense though, because I did enjoy the X-Men comic books, and that was basically just, you know, the cartoon version of opening up a classic X-Men comic book. I still enjoy those books to this day. Some of my favorite comic book characters of all time come out of that franchise. But anytime I find like see-through toys, I think it's kind of cool. I don't know. Translucent plastic that hasn't yellowed is kind of cool. You know, Iceman wasn't my favorite character. I didn't think his powers were all that cool, you know, but still a cool figure to have. And anytime I see anything from that line, what is it? Toy Biz, I think is who did those. They're rarely expensive. They're usually pretty cheap, and a lot of times they're your bargain figures, even on card. You know, when you find them loose for $1 or $2 as an action figure to fidget with and bang around on your desk, can't go wrong with some early 90s X-Men, in my opinion. All right, so that's 4. We'll do one more. That'll round us out at 5. A good number to look at today. Now, as I was closing my eyes and trying to pull a figure out, I had to redo it like 3 times because I have this weird quirk that I don't want to do 2 from the same series for these videos. You know, I want to save that for plenty of future videos. So, you know, I pulled another Ninja Turtle, and then I pulled another wrestler, and then I even pulled another Marvel comic book superhero. So I had to put all those guys back, but on my 4th try, I finally got a representative from a different toy line coming to us from the Masters of the Universe. And the evil horde, we've got Grizzlor. Never had Grizzlor as a kid, but I always thought it was one of the coolest action figures. You know, that Masters of the Universe line did some really cool, like, gimmick style figures that were just great for playing with as a kid. You know, you had Stinkor who smelled. You know, you had some of the figures that like squirted water, or their necks got really long, or they were bendy, or, you know, you could rotate their arms and like the gears inside their chest would move around. Or there was one Mosquitor where you could squeeze him and like the blood would pump in his chest. They just did a really good job with that line. Mattel. And Grizzlor's cool, you know, he's just a fuzzball of a figure. Nothing really fancy to him. He looks kind of like Beastman, I guess, but fuzzy and a darker color. Incomplete, but he's at least got his vest on. You know, without this thing, I guess it's a vest. I don't know what you call that, his armor. Without that, it's a really funny looking figure. It does. It just looks like somebody's hamster got loose in your toy box. I don't know. And, you know, usually when I see Grizzlor at toy shows or wherever, sometimes he's not in the best shape. But this one is really clean. You know, it's not matted or anything like that. And his joints are still pretty good. And that's one of the problems I have with a lot of He-Man figures is the joints are so loose you can't even stand them up half the time, which obviously doesn't matter to me in this situation. But I still like, you know, if I'm fidgeting with it or hanging on to him while I'm you know, here hanging out in the den, I like the joints to be kind of tight and not feel like they're about to break off. So that's the case on this one. Some of my other He-Man figures, not so much. Like my Mantenna is my original Mantenna from childhood, and it feels like it's about to fall apart. Like you can literally hold that figure like this and just shake it a little bit and the legs will completely swing. If you know what I'm talking about. You know, they're old, you know, they're from the mid 80s. What do you expect? But I think this is a good one to round us out. I don't really have any stories of him. You know, I did think that some of the Hordak, the evil horde, you know, his henchmen, I think sometimes they were cooler than Skeletor's minions some of the time. Not all the time, of course. There's exceptions, but I thought that their whole setup with the Fright Zone I thought Hordak was kind of a cool counterpart to Skeletor, and I liked She-Ra. You know, I liked the She-Ra cartoon a lot. In fact, I think I enjoyed it. I've said this before on the channel. I think I enjoyed it at times more than I did the He-Man cartoons. So that's what I kind of associated old Grizzlor with, is that group. But yeah, I'm gonna put these back in the pile. We talked about a few good ones today, and we'll save some. Like I said, this will be whenever I'm looking for, you know, I'm just sitting here and I feel like doing a video, but I don't feel like doing a whole lot of prep and a whole lot of editing afterwards. This will be a good, fun little series for us to continue. You know, literally just take some vintage action figures out of this crate right here and come over here and talk about them. So hope you guys enjoyed it. And there we are. So I hope that you all enjoyed our little midweek hangout today. And if you did, be sure to subscribe. We're going to be doing a lot more of this kind of stuff going forward, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. Also, don't forget to like the video, but only if you actually liked the video. But for now, and as always, relax, enjoy life, and be kind. We'll see you in the next one.